there are probably very few things that parents want more than for their children to get along with each other. And if it's true for parents, it's certainly true alachas kama v'kama for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He looks at us, his children, and all he wants is for us to get along. We learn so much about achdus, togetherness, and unity. When we get along with each other, when we take responsibility for each other, then Hashem is proud of us, and we want Hashem to be proud of us. And at the same time, there are moments in families when fights do happen. And what are we supposed to do when those moments come? How are we supposed to act? What are we supposed to try to avoid? And how do we solve the problem? Avraham Avinu is faced with one of those quarrels. His shepherds notice that the shepherds of his nephew Lot are bringing their sheep to graze in land that does not belong to them. And so Avraham's shepherds say to Lot's shepherds, "What are you doing? You're stealing. You can't do this." And so Lot's shepherds reply and they say, "Look, Avraham doesn't have anyone who's going to inherit him. Lot is the one who is going to inherit everything that belongs to Avraham. And Hashem just said that the entire land of Israel belongs to Avraham, and therefore we can take our sheep and we can have them graze wherever we want, because all of this land really by extension belongs to us." And so the Torah records this machlokas. Vayihi Riv, there was a fight ben Roei Miknei Avram uven Roei Miknei Lot, and listen to how the pasuk ends. V'haknani v'haprizi az yoshev ba'aretz. The Knani and the Prizi, these two nations, were in the land at that time. And so Avram is faced with this problem. What does he do? So Avram turns to his nephew Lot and he says to him the following: Lot, al nasihi meriva, let's not have a fight. He says, we're family. I love you. I'll be there for you. We're always connected. But because of the nature of your shepherds and my shepherds, we're not going to be able to get along. Our homes will not be able to be shared with each other. We have to have a separation. We have to have a boundary between us. And so Avram says, Lot, if you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Don't worry. If you're in trouble, I'll come and I'll help you. And Avram does, as we see a little bit later on in the parsha. He comes and rescues his nephew Lot. But what does the second part of the pasuk have to do with the first part? Why did Avram not pursue peace further within conversation instead of just separating from Lot? And the answer, I believe, that the Imrei Emes Zatzal gives is something which is so pertinent to us today in our lives, right now. And that is the following. He says, you know what the end of the pasuk has to do with the rest of it? The end of the pasuk telling us that there were other nations around, there were other people who were watching what was happening between Avram and Lot. And so the Imrei Emes says, if there is ever a situation in which there is machlokas, there is this disagreement among us, the Jewish people, and there are other people who are watching us, be careful, because it's a Chillul Hashem. We're desecrating Hashem's name. And a Jew must do everything possible in their power to avoid desecrating Hashem's name. And so Avraham Avinu says there is no time now to try to make a deal, to try to make an arrangement, to try to make shalom by sitting and having all kinds of conversations. Avraham Avinu says there are people who are watching us, the Knani and the Prizi, they're watching us, and therefore, sorry, we need to make a separation so the fighting stops now. Otherwise, we're going to make a Chillul Hashem. In our time, in our community today, we see the power of Chillul Hashem. We see that everything we do is watched, is almost always now recorded, and if it's negative, it's certainly posted for the world to see. And the idea of Chillul Hashem is so palpable. In our surroundings, we have to be incredibly careful and diligent. and recognize that just as Avram Avinu, he was the Or, he was the light, he represented monotheism, he was the ambassador of Hashem in this world, and because of that he was so conscious and so careful not to make a Chillul Hashem, that he said, look, even if it means that I can't live with my nephew, then that's what I have to do. Because to make a Chillul Hashem is the worst thing that a person can do. So let us learn this lesson and make sure that everywhere we go and every action that we take, we recognize, we realize that we have the opportunity to make a Kiddush Hashem, to bless Hashem's name. And at all costs, we need to avoid behavior which would make a Chillul Hashem. May we be Zoche, may we merit to follow in the footsteps of Avram and of Sarah and make Kiddush Hashem in all that we do. Thank you for listening and good Shabbos.